All right, guys. Happy Friday. Hopefully you can see us.
We're in a new little room today, just doing this video real quick to kind of stay out of the way. So it's a little dark in here, so if you can't see us, just listen in and comment if you have any questions. So
Yeah.
Take it away. My 2 cents, episode what?
This is episode 12.
Episode 12.
Episode 12. So here's what we're going to kind of talk about today. We have seen recently, and just I think throughout the history of the fitness industry, is when you sit all day, you should stretch this. Here's the best core exercise for your body. Here's foam roll this, foam roll that. Like there's all this.
The best cure for back pain.
Yeah, the best cure for back pain. And we find, and we were guilty of this too at times. You know, like, hey, well, okay, your hips are tight, so let's do this stretch. Let me jam this ball and this kettlebell handle into your hip flexors, and we'll get them to release.
Yeah.
But the more we study like functional anatomy period, but functional anatomy particularly, we use FMS, we use neurokinetic therapy. We test a lot of muscles now, and we are finding that most muscles have like 4 categories, if you will. We have tight, loose, weak, strong.
Yep.
And they like to pair themselves together accordingly.
Yeah, basically any two of those.
Any two of those that are going to go together. Sometimes you can have a tight, strong muscle. You can have a tight, weak muscle. You can have a loose muscle, just kind of in general. It can be weak. But yeah, so what we're looking for is, when we're testing things, is we're looking for which muscles are working and not working, because we don't want you stretching your hips if your hips are weak and tight.
Yeah.
Generally, we find that they pair up that way. They're weak and tight, and what we want to aim for is loose and strong.
Yeah. Well, and the tightening of a muscle, the shortening of a muscle, usually is a guarding action from the body to protect the weakness, or its response to the weakness, and so it tightens it down. So when we stretch that muscle without knowing why we're stretching it, or what's the relationship, or does it even need to be stretched, we are taking a weak muscle and then weakening the neurology of it.
Right.
So mechanically it's weak, and now that we've overstretched it, neurology-wise it's weak, and we see those people, usually yoga people.
Yes. Yeah, like, oh, I'm really bendy. But then we've got like guys that like to golf, and their hamstrings are so locked down, they're like, I stretch, but it never lets go. And there's a reason why. Like, your brain is guarding that, and so we have to figure out why. And so kind of my 2 cents of all this is we have a Facebook note that we're going to publish that has a lot more breakdown on all this from our perspective.
Right.
But your brain is guarding that for a reason, and you trying to stretch, and stretch, and especially before activity, is what leads to tears and pulls and stuff like that. Your brain is guarding that, and it's not going to let go, no matter how much you stretch. It's futile. It really is futile, because your noggin up here is thinking, if I do that, I'm going to get hurt, and it's just trying to protect you.
Well, there's debate of, the research now is whether static stretching is necessary versus just dynamic movements of strength training, things like that. And I just tell people an example of, if I'm sitting in the chair all day, and what I think is my hip flexors are now tight, I need to stretch them. But in the reality, my hip flexors are actually weak, and as a response have shortened.
Right.
And so we think like, oh, my back hurts, but I don't want to treat my back pain. I want to treat what's causing it, which is tight hips. So I'm going to stretch tight hips. And really, you're almost there. You're just one layer away to realize your hips are tight because they've weakened. Yeah. Now, if you're a strong man and you're deadlifting 600, 700, 800 pounds off the ground, and the kind of stuff you do, and you have tight hips, we're looking at tight and strong.
Right.
And you might need to stretch your hips, and that's where we do a lot of our neurokinetic therapy protocol of testing a muscle before we just stretch it, because if the neurology is already gone, if the muscle's weak, there's no point in stretching it out.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing is like, when we're finding tight and weak muscles, and people are trying to like endure through workouts, you're only making the problem worse.
Right.
Because you're strengthening that poor pattern, and so that's why we use the FMS, functional movement screen, to screen our people, see how you move in these big patterns, and that gives us our indication from the big level, and then we take it down into the smaller and more focused things. That way we know if we're going to have to release a hip flexor, it's not pleasant. If you've ever had a psoas release, it is not pleasant at all.
That, or a glute. When you get somebody who thinks this way globally and finds the muscles that actually need to be shut down, they're the ones that make you want to hop off the table with almost no pressure at all.
Yeah, I mean, just working with a client yesterday and had to touch her hip flexor. I said, hey, I need you to touch right there. And I said, is it tender? And she's like barely touching her hip, and it's like, oh my gosh, that's super tender. I said, well, you get the joy of doing this to yourself, and then I'm gonna go get a kettlebell and a lacrosse ball, and we're gonna add a little more pressure because otherwise it won't release. And she's like, should I be sweating? Like, I shouldn't be sweating just from trying to release a muscle, and that's how neurologically connected it is. Like, it will make you sweat.
Well, it's not that, I think there's a time and place for static stretching. Obviously, gymnasts and dancers have been doing it for a long time, but they have a reason.
Right.
And they're gymnasts and dancers, and we're not.
Yes.
Like I said, they're very strong. They're not always completely functional. Usually they're really good at compensating, so they still have their issues.
Yeah.
But they're stretching to a point beyond biomechanics, natural biomechanics, because it looks good to us when we watch them do it.
Yeah.
So we want pretty lines, we want the body to flow, and that's not always the range of motion. That's just functional range of motion that's required by the rest of us average people. And so they're the anomaly, but we see the videos of their the little girls doing the ab workouts, and the underarm commercial of Michael Phelps and the women's gymnastics team, and we're like, oh, that's really motivating, that's so cool, and I'm gonna go do that ab routine.
Right.
And then you pull something.
Yes.
And then you're down for 3 months,
Exactly.
where you kind of have to meet yourself where you're at and start to learn this stuff, because their coaches understand this. They understand that an extension problem when they're doing a back handspring isn't always, their mobility this way. They video it, they slow it down, they see where their spine is bending, where it should be bending. Are they doing too much extension through the lumbar, not enough through the thoracic? And they break it down exactly like we're talking about. And now all of a sudden that gymnast's lower back doesn't hurt anymore when they're doing back handsprings. And it wasn't because, their abs weren't firing. It wasn't, because their glutes were weak. It was a coordination thing. And that's, the one thing I think we can take from an athletic level down to even beginners is we have people that have been taught how to deadlift. People have been taught how to swing a golf club, how to run, how to kick a ball, but they've never been coached.
Right.
And the coaching aspect is what takes normal, everyday YouTube video instruction that teaches you and changes it into somebody who's there watching you, coaching your movement, which carryover-wise is your progress is way faster.
Yeah.
You feel way better, and what you're getting is more quality than just being taught something.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to remember is you're a creature of habit. I'm a creature of habit. I mean, to the point where I love it when I teach in settings and stuff like that, and I tell them, how many of you go to the same gas pump every time? And they go, sort of. Like, I do, because I go to the same place and the same one. Yeah, I like that. How many of you,
Alex,
get mad when you go to a place like work and somebody's in your parking spot? Mm-hmm. It ain't labeled, but you park there every day, so therefore it's yours. It used to be great teaching in college that the spot that students sat on the first day is the one that they picked all year, and were upset if somebody was in that seat. They're like, I usually sit here. It's like, dude, these ain't a sign, man. But we are creatures of habit, and we tend to do the things that we feel we're good at. But you need to do the things most often that you're bad at. In terms of rolling, like when you foam roll, you probably foam roll the same things every time, same amount of time.
Out of habit,
because you're like, oh, this is my routine. And coaching, like for us and with our clients, is like, you need to do this. Well, I'm not good at it. That's exactly why we're doing it. You need to stretch this area because, you think you're good at the other one. Well, because you're good at the other one, it's hurting you. This is why your hip hurts. This is why these things are hurting, because you're doing the same thing over and over again, and we have to counteract that. And I think the final kind of my 2 cents I have on this is that you have got to have mobility day, recovery, stretch. Like, you have to have that in there. You just have to know which ones are best for you. and it has to be part of your program. Like there is no getting away from it. Like,
you've got to wave load it.
Yeah.
If you don't have ups and downs in the intensity, volume, frequency of your workouts, your body will do it for you in the form of injury or plateau.
It will tell you it's time to stop. And so that's, it's crucial. It's crucial to do those things. Have medium weeks, light weeks, heavy weeks, but include a day of like foam rolling. If you do need to jam a ball into something, just a yoga class, whatever it is, like, get in there and do those things because they will help you.
Yeah, I think this whole topic, when we post the note, you'll see that the idea of tight, loose, weak, strong gets us into the area that you're not lacking flexibility, you're actually lacking strength and stability.
Right.
Probably most likely through the spine, but when we start talking about strength and stability, we could sit here for hours and talk about the difference between stability and stiffness, the difference between
mobility and
strength,
flexibility.
strength training and intensity training. Are you doing strength and conditioning or conditioning and conditioning? Like, we could go on forever, and that's where you can tell these topics keep jumping from one to another. But the bulk of what we're trying to get people to grasp is that, the muscles work in those pairs that, it's like your knee jerk shouldn't be to stretch something, it should be to strengthen and stabilize something.
Yes. So
Hearts,
send us some more.
So that'll be it.
That's it.
Final takeaways.
That's kind of it. And if you have any questions about that, I'll post the note here in just a few minutes. We're gonna try to embed the video in there as well. Ask us those questions. We'll love to explain that for you. And don't just don't jam stuff into things thinking it's good because it hurts good. It may or may not hurt good.
Yeah, exactly. So, cool. All right, guys, that's it for my 2 cents this week. We'll catch you next week.
All right, guys.
Bye.
Bye, Felicia.